Howdy.
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 I can do it more times than you. Don't do this game. You're not even American.
Well, yeah, it's a very American thing, isn't it?
Yeah, be careful. Don't start fights you can't win, okay?
Yeah. Um, so yeah. Hello.
Hello. All right. Hit it up. Name you want to be called by, pronouns, topic. Give me the rundown. I know it's late for you.
My my name is Alexandria. I go by Alex for short. My pronouns are she, her, and the topic I want to talk about is basically just I kind of have a problem with some of the queer representation that I'm seeing kind of like applauded a lot.
Uh-huh.
And it's not like, okay, I'm gonna use a specific example and hi chat. Please do not cancel me for this. I don't like She-Ra. It's not it's I yeah. She-Ra is not I mean it's not specifically She-Ra, but it's like one of a group of shows that I kind of have a problem with because of almost like a I wouldn't okay, ghettoization is a bit of a strong word, but like
Uh-huh.
I feel like a lot of the good queer representation that we could be seeing in like mainstream shows is kind of getting it's sort of like getting all of the good queer characters you could have and then bundling them into like 3 shows that no one who watches like mainstream shows really watches.
You mean they're trying
And
to like speed run it. Like rather than
yeah,
like having good media that now allows for the existence and exposure of queer people, they're like, all right, now we're making queer media. All right, we're gonna have 70 gay characters in every show, and everyone's gonna be extremely gay, etc., etc.
yeah. I mean like and also like specifically when they go like, oh, we want to have like good queer representation. What they mean is good gay representation, and they'll have like one non-binary character who's like basically it's just a butch lesbian in all but name. And I feel really bad about saying that, but like that is what a lot of shows do.
Didn't
Like,
She-Ra have a pretty good NB character with that shapeshifter or whatever? Because all non-binary
yeah,
people want to be shapeshifters IRL, right? So
yes. But I think like even that is like they had like a million needless gay I say needless, but like they had like every second character was some flavor of the rainbow, but they only had like one trans character, and it's that one like NB gecko
right.
person.
That's the
Yeah,
non-binary. Yeah, the
yeah,
shapeshifter.
yeah.
I mean,
And I feel like it's kind of box ticking in that sense.
there are gonna be limits with that, right? Because especially with stuff that's going to be aired on cartoon or like children-friendly networks, there are limits to what you can get away with, like trans stuff, right? I mean,
Yeah,
like we're sort of we're getting to the point where you can well normalize gay stuff. I think the trans stuff coming along a little bit more slowly. I think. I don't. For me, it's not really like a thing with tokenization. It's just the problem is that it feels like yeah, it feels like, I don't know, they're blowing their load too early in a way where
I,
it's
the
creating
characters aren't
queer
ready.
media, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like my main problem is that I think there's like 2 purposes or like utilities to queer representation and like good queer representation. And the first is that you have representation for your queer audience, like, or your minority audience, like, just more generally, like, a minority audience needs to sort of feel seen within that piece of media.
Uh-huh. Wait,
And having,
really quickly, I'm being informed by chat. Apparently She-Ra had like 3 trans characters, one of which was Perfuma, that flower princess bitch, and the reason that it wasn't announced officially or whatever, I think somebody in chat said that the studio heads would have made them change the character's design or something. I think I remember hearing that at some point, that Perfuma was like trans in all but name or something, like working within the limits of the.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think there was some controversy around like the cancellation of Our House, and like because there was some Disney exec quoted as saying like, "Oh, it's not like putting the brand value or whatever." And normally that'd be the kind of thing where I'm like, "Oh, it's but it's not that they have a problem with." Yeah, and I'm seeing people in chat being like, "Oh, Our House turned so gay." It's just like, Our House was very gay, and that was not the problem. I think the problem there was actually that a lot of networks are pivoting away from like YA and adult animation, and they're pivoting more towards like younger kids animation. And I mean, when I say younger, I mean like toddlers. Like, it's actually really depressing, because I don't think the generation that's coming after me is going to get anything like Regular Show or Our House or like Gravity Falls. But
Well,
I
maybe
was
not.
going to.
Aren't we doing kind of like a Western Renaissance for animation right now? I mean, maybe not so much on
kind of
Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, but I feel like
Yeah,
if you're looking just like across the board, there's way more available now, at least than there would have been when I was growing up, right? Before Adventure Time, or
yeah.
before
Oh God,
Flapjack, which I guess was kind of the progenitor in a way.
yeah. But so one of my main one of the examples that I like to use, the of the two sort of facets of representation, the one I didn't get to was you have to, one of the things that's it's good for representation to go after is trying to normalize that group, and sort of not necessarily like explain because explaining a minority's presence kind of justifies the suspicion that they shouldn't be there, or like there's a they have to be explained. They cannot just be there, and so that's why there was a trans character in Big Mouth, and I just did not like that at all.
I
That was something that and
I'm not a big mouth connoisseur. To an extent though, like for a lot of people, you kind of do have to explain trans people though, right? The issue is like, especially if you're making a show that's meant to be marketed to a large audience, a lot of the gay stuff, especially when you're dealing with younger animation where there's not very rarely anything explicitly sexual, it's usually just kind of, positive feelings or sort of affection or whatever. But with trans stuff, I mean, if you're actually going to have like a named or identified trans person, like, because with trans people, you can't like imply transness in the same way as you can imply homosexuality, right? All you need to do with like two lesbians is have them like look at each other and one blushes. I mean, that right there, okay, they've done it. Needs very little explanation. With trans people, it's like, okay, well, how do you handle that? Do you have like if you're talking about a trans woman, do you have like a very explicitly feminine person, but then like somebody at one point makes it like a candid like, oh, and then they're like, oh, well, my name's Jennifer now or something, like it's so much more involved and it's so much easier to fuck up. So I feel like it has to be given a bit more attention unless you're really trusting the audience to pick up what you're putting down, and I don't know if you can do that for something mass marketed to like younger audiences.
So I actually think that there is a way to do it, and it's something that Steven Universe did really well. Like handling really complex adult themes largely through like metaphors and stuff like that. So Steven Universe came out when I was sort of like a young teenager, and I was like watching it. I was maybe like 13, 14. And it was like they managed to do an episode about the complexities of consent for kids without doing anything remotely to do with sex. And I think that is the kind of vibe I want to go for.
It doesn't
you don't explicitly have to have like a trans character, but you can have like themes. And I think that's like Star Trek kind of did that with some of the I'm not like a huge big Star Trek fan, but like I know I've heard that there's like chat help me out. It's like some there was like a trope. There's like a device, a plot device, not a plot device, but like a thing within the lore or the story or whatever.
Coding? The archetype? You're leaving a lot of room here. Symbol, allegory,
like,
analogy, metaphor?
Yeah, like an allegory, yeah. But it's anyway, but I think you can have, instead of having like generally like, I don't know, explicit references, the allegories can also be just as good and even better, because when you do it, like when you have some kind of allegory or metaphor, you can get it on a much more mainstream show, and you can get meaning across a lot more easily, because people are a lot more like open to it, especially if they're not.
I've heard a lot of people say they don't like that, though. Like, because you say, for example, that you don't like the fact that trans people have to explain their presence in a lot of this stuff, but I've heard a lot of trans people don't like the fact that they can only really be coded in allegory, right? I mean, like...
Yeah, I've heard that. Like I've seen that.
It's also a kind of otherization in a way, you know. If something can only really be depicted by sort of nudging at it rather than directly exposing it, that's still sort of an implicit acknowledgement of its otherness.
Yeah, and I think so. I'm just pointing out that as like one option, but the option I would probably prefer is like a sort of in passing reference to like, so something, this isn't necessarily in a TV show, but I think one of my favorite examples of like a really, really nonchalant, like just offhand reference to a character being trans is, do you know Rainbow Six Siege?
I do not. Well, I know about it, but I haven't played it.
Yeah, it's like, I liked it because it's a like super duper mainstream game. This is not some like queer thing that is like, you know, only played by like, you know, TikTok ukulele teens or whatever, but like it's a big game. It's got a lot of traction. It's very popular, and
I think I've heard that one of the characters there is trans.
Yeah. So they had like a trans character come up, and they didn't do like a big announcing about it. They didn't make a big deal about it. But in the bio of Osa, there's just a bit that references like, oh, she was isolated at uni or something because of her transition. And it literally did not say anything else other than that. And then afterwards, the fan base was sort of like pestering the developers, like, "Hey, do you mean this character is trans? Do you mean this?" And the devs are eventually like, "Yeah, it's, you know, deal with it." And from what
can that really work for like youth animation though? Because like, I mean, if you have like a kid show like Gravity Falls tier, and there's a character and they just randomly say like my transition, especially since kids shows tend to have kids characters, you know. So like if we're talking about characters that are meant to be like 13 or 14 years old, you can't refer to this stuff having happened in the distant past either. Like you can't have a 14-year-old be like, oh yeah, at 9, you know, I looked like that, but now I look like obviously, you know, things take a little longer than that. We're not full transhumanist you know, meme factories just yet. I just don't know how you can get away with it, I guess, without the piecemealing. Like, is there an example of like a young animation that you think did handle this well? Because I think Owl House was pretty okay, right? I mean,
yeah, but I think Steven Universe was probably one of my favorite examples of like mainstream yet very, very deeply queer coded animation.
Because I think, doesn't that kind of hit the thing with like queer animation being distinct? Because Steven Universe was the gayest gay thing. It was the gay. They literally like an entire gay alien race that was always gay, and they transformed by fucking spiritually, and that the gay, like, it's very, very, very gay, you know. And I think a lot of people found it kind of saccharine, if anything, you know, like playing it up too hard.
No, but I mean, like initially, right in the beginning, it was just I say in the beginning, when there was like half a season of it out on Cartoon Network in like the sort of mid 2010s or whatever, it wasn't as like, it didn't have a load of like rainbow marketing or whatever. It didn't have, you know, pink everything, you know, Steven is a gender bender or whatever. It was just like this super duper like relatable for the average audience, because like the average audience for like Cartoon Network at the time would have been like boys Steven's age, like within the canon of the show, of course, but like, you know, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old boys. And I think it's good when it's like making that character like relatable and then putting them in a world where they sort of, they can become a like a proxy of the audience.
I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that generally. It's just, it seems like for me, it seems like so many of these shows have to be about being gay or trans or whatever, you know?
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
like because like Steven Universe is about being gay. Like, let's be real, okay? Steven Universe is not a show that happens and there are queer characters. It's a show about being gay, you know? But like ideally, like with representation that is really like you know, coded towards full acceptance, you know, it wouldn't, like, these shows wouldn't just be about the thing, because in a way coding it as such means that it's something to look out for, something unusual, something distinct from the norm. It's not like shows that are mostly about like het characters are known as like het shows. I mean, maybe to gay people they are, but generally they're not marketed that way. They're just shows that have those elements. So
TV shows, like, you know, it's, you know, for my sins, I like Regular Show, one of the straight, but like, it's.
The show's good.
Yeah, I'm just joking, but it's. I think the problem for me lies in the fact that a lot of my peers who aren't queer, like, you know, they're cishet and they do watch the same kind of stuff. I feel it's like they've literally never seen any of these really amazing queer representations, like characters or whatever, in shows that they watch, because they're not watching She-Ra and Owl House and Steven Universe. They're watching, like, you know, Regular Show and Bob's Burgers and stuff like that.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like, I don't think, keep in mind that like stuff like the Owl House and stuff like Steven Universe and stuff is like, again, kind of for gay people. I mean, from the people,
that is a problem. Like,
well,
inherently, that's a problem.
From the people who work on those shows to the types of plots and narratives and themes, like all these shows, and don't get me wrong, I like them. I really do like the Owl House. You know, I like Steven Universe sometimes.
Yeah, yes.
But like these shows are like very much about like flowery, you know, like angsty protags with a diverse range of queer friends who use friendship to overcome darkness. I mean, it's very much like, you know, anime tier shit, but with way more gender ambiguity. And there's nothing wrong with that, but if queer representation means shows like Regular Show and Bob's Burgers and whatever have like gay characters or queer or trans or whatever who aren't like the gay or queer or trans character, they're integrated as seamlessly as any other element of the story, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not asking for like some perfect, you know, like some perfect solution to representation where you can have like an exactly, you know, a secondary character that doesn't have to be the main focus of the story, that just happens to be like, you know, I think having gay characters is kind of just an accepted thing that is just okay, and I think that's kind of what makes me a little bit cynical about the representation within Owl House. Like, it's good, but I do think that there's kind of like, it's a bit of a generalization, I know, but it's like there's a sort of like an okayness with showing particularly like lesbian relationships with like two attractive women, because it's something that is appealing to the target audience of this kind of style of shows, right?
I get that, but isn't that like most things, right? I mean, most
I mean,
depicted relationships are between attractive people because it's generally
I'm
more
not just
pleasant
saying
for the
it's,
audience.
it's, how dare they put hot people on there, but like, I'm saying like, I do get kind of cynical about the idea that there seems to be like, whenever there's a show that specifically has like, you know, some decent like queer representation, but it's only within the context of like one really, really tropey lesbian couple, then like I sort of do get a little bit cynical, and it's
Well, then we run back in the problem because this is the double-edged blade, right? On one hand, if you only have so many gay and trans and whatever characters, they're only going to be represented in so and so many ways. But on the other hand, if you have too many, then it does that thing again where you're speed running it, where you're like, all right, this is the gay show. Let's have as many. Okay, we can't just have this one type of lesbian. We have to have like 6 types of lesbians. You know, we can't just have
I'm
like
not,
this one
yeah, no,
type of like queer. Yeah. So the issue is like at the end of the day, right? Like, but we don't think of it this way with like a bunch of other stuff, do we? I mean, like if there's like only if it's not like a heavy relationship oriented show and there's one like het relationship, I don't think people like pry for stereotype quite as much because again, it's more normative, the heterosexual relationship. So people aren't looking for like these are the 2 catty wine aunt type lesbians, or oh, here's like the queer AFAB like non-binary person who plays the ukulele. Like the stereotypes are we're taught to pay more attention to them when we're looking at marginalized groups.
yeah. I think if I'm completely honest, it's like I am kind of sick of seeing the same like redrawn lesbian couple in like 5 different shows that seem to all be made by like Rebecca Sugar wannabes. That sounds really, that's like the harsh monkey brain version of what I'm trying to get at. Is like I am kind of, I'm done with watching shows that are like, I don't like feeling like deliberately specifically pandered to, and I just want to watch a show. Like I feel like I'm trying to have my cake and eat it, but like I do want to watch a normal show that it's relatable for lots of people. But like, and I'm not saying that these shows are like bad, but I'm saying that within the context, having all of these shows, and then also as a result having mainstream shows with really, really like inefficient or just missing representation is kind of like, it's kind of part of the problem.
I don't know if there's a way to solve this because I mean, again, it's the double-edged sword, right? You're complaining about problems that are at once caused by an over-fastidious desire to engage in representation and like by not doing it enough. It seems like it's really difficult to strike that balance, And maybe I'm jaded here. I mean, I'm not like trans or whatever. I'm only part of the queer community like as a matter of technicality because you fuckers are way too gay for me. But like when I look at people online, like I don't know, man. Like we talk about stereotypes for certain types of groups or whatever, but I see them reflected in reality, right? Like honest to God, I think when I saw Owl House, when I was watching Owl House, I feel like it included like all the people, right? Like I feel like Luce was was like 2/3 of just the gays, just
I mean,
in the form of a 16-year-old Mexican or whatever. Like it was fairly representative in that respect, at least.
Genuinely, I kid you not, I did not know anything about Owl House before I started watching it. And the first episode, I was like, wait, is this some like, have they just written in that this character is like, and it like literally I took one look at Luz and I was like, right, okay, how many episodes is it gonna take for them to make her get like in a relationship with one of the other female characters.
Well, right, well, that's right.
Just to
Exactly. It's
prove the
gay
point.
coded. The whole thing is
Yeah.
gay coded, right?
I don't like that it's gay coded. I just want the representation without the coding. Because if it's not, because honestly, if you just took out all of the coding from a show like Steven Universe or Owl House, honestly, it would be kind of what I'm looking for.
I don't know what Steven Universe is without the queer coding. I feel like if you took that away, that's like 80%.
I mean,
It's all people talked
I
about too.
mean, like, I mean, just in concept, like, okay, let's take Owl House then. Like, if you take out all of the like My Little Pony for teenagers, Friendship is Magic, all of that shit, like, if you take out all of that, like, really hideous, like, cringy queer coding.
I don't think any of it was hideous or cringy. I mean, it is like a kid's show.
Like, yeah, it's a kid's show, and that's partly me just being, you know, stern and stiff upper lip and British and all that. But I find a lot of things cringy just because their overt shows of emotion are not a British thing.
I get that. But if you look at like trans Twitter, for example, being cringy and saccharine is like the only thing they know how to do. It's disgusting. But it is, however, reality. So I guess they need the representation too, right?
Yeah. And I mean, like, if I sort of take the concept of what I was talking about before with Osa and put that into a show like Owl House, right?
Osa.
You can't. Osa, the Rainbow Six Siege character.
Oh, right. Yeah. But I don't know if that can work for a kid's show, can it?
Because I would contend that it kind of could, because if you can write that in a bio, you can write that into like a passing conversation in a TV show or some exposition or something like that.
Okay, you have to walk me through this, okay? If we're talking about a show with an intended age range as The Owl House that needs to adhere to the same censorship requirements as The Owl House. Yeah, I mean, it went through what? It was Cartoon Network, right?
Yeah.
How would you...
I mean, Cartoon Network also made Steven Universe, and that was for the same targeted audience.
Right,
and that was like basically a pride parade on TV. But
it was all allegory.
Yeah, it was... Well, okay, so it was mostly allegory.
The trans stuff, at least, was allegory. Oh, sorry, Owl House is Disney, my bad. But yeah,
Disney is kind of a little bit more strict, I guess.
I think a little bit more, yeah.
Also, I think Disney are kind of keen to, like, a lot of companies are very keen to have, because they are clearly funding these shows with the intention of, because Disney won't have funded Owl House without having seen a decent amount of storyboarding or, you know, scripts or whatever. They'll have known from the get-go that this is what they're investing in. This is the vibe of the show.
Well, right, sure. I'm just wondering, like, with regards to the Owl House, like, how do you drop casually for, like, a character, like, I transitioned, you know? Because you can handle that in allegory through the Steven Universe stuff. You know, you can do that just fine, I think. But that acknowledgement entails a lot of stuff that these networks don't normally like want to work with. So for example, it's an explicitly like sexual thing, at least in the minds of the general public. The idea of transitioning, I mean, it's called a sex change to most people, I'd say, you know. So you can't have a kid say it for a number of reasons. If an adult said it, like, and they were like, oh yeah, I transitioned, you know, I feel like they'd go over the head of the vast majority of the people watching. You could have them drop it casually, or maybe like you could have like an older woman, and then like they get, you know, they go to like an old place and there's like a photo of a guy and they like flip the thing down. They're like, oh haha, yeah, you're something like that.
I think that would work, and that's not something that you need to, because like I'll take, just so you can get what I sort of mean, the example of the Big Mouth episode, which literally just has one like insular episode. This character only appears in that episode, and they are there for the purpose of, they are a plot device. Like, they're a plot device for explaining trans kids, and that is like that's the reason that they're bad representation to me, because I do want trans characters, and I don't. My problem isn't like you cannot explain these people. You just have to act as if the audience should already know. You know, how dare the audience not know? They just need to do their research or whatever. I think the main thing is I just don't like in the Big Mouth episode. The point was that like, I'm sure Big Mouth, because the thing about Big Mouth is that it's about like explaining. It's like a cartoon sex ed class, or it's supposed to be, within the form of like a sort of cringy Netflix comedy for kids.
Well,
And
Netflix. Sorry, Big Mouth is not for kids. Big Mouth is absolutely.
I mean, it is
intended for adults.
Well, it is marketed towards like teenagers, and it's like.
Is it?
When it started coming out, like it was quite popular at like my school and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, sure, yeah, like obviously teenagers will watch it, you know, but I'm pretty sure that it's marketed for adults.
Yeah, sure, but the main point is that within the context of within the context of Big Mouth, the queer representation is something that they are explicitly. That is the purpose of the show. It's like they're explaining it, right?
Well, yeah, sure, but I don't know how this compares necessarily to like youth animation. I think these are like totally different. These are like totally different, like almost incomparable. The only thing that ties them really is the fact that they're animated, right? I mean, for the like the trans stuff or whatever, I can't speak to the Big Mouth stuff. People in chat are saying the trans character like sticks around or remains relevant or whatever, but like I don't know, because
she's in one episode and it's literally explaining that this character is trans, and then also in the episode it's like explaining what trans kids are while explaining that trans kids like universally get. I don't know, this is more common in the US, but like oh yeah, trans kids just go and get the puberty blockers and that's it. Like, it is supposed to be a more mainstream explanation, and I can't like fault it for that, but the problem is that it feels the need to spend like 10 minutes explaining.
Right, but it's not a kids animation, so I don't know how it pertains. You could like
I'm not specifically talking about like animation just for kids, by the way. I'm just talking about like mainstream animation.
Oh well, if that's the case, animation is barely relevant. I thought we were talking about the limits of what you could like talk to with kids. With a show like Big Mouth, they can say like, huh?
Yeah, I would like to see that kind of representation in kids shows as well. But not to the degree of like explaining sex in incredibly explicit ways, because that's just like.
Well, but this is what I keep asking you: what would you explain then in a kids show for a trans character that isn't just allegory? Like how could you do that? The idea
of having someone who's like, you know, exploring the idea of someone, you know, you said like, oh, what if you had an old lady like flip over a photo of. You can make discrete references to these kinds of things and then sort of semi-explain them in a very like simplistic way that isn't.
Like, how do you follow up that? So like maybe somebody brings that up and they're like, oh yeah, I was called fucking John, but now I'm called Sasha or whatever. Like, okay, but like. The issue is that like we're running up against the problem again, where in doing so you make it more palatable to a young audience, but you're also like barely centering the issue. Because the problem is, right, like for you can have characters that are gay or lesbian or whatever, and have those not be essential elements of their identity while they're still very prominent, you know? Like you can have a gay guy who loves fucking dudes, is just a huge dude fucker, you know, but it doesn't like, it's not really like the defining element of their character. It's not that important compared to other stuff. The problem with being trans is that the majority of trans people's goal is to not be known as trans. At least that's more common with like older groups or whatever, but I think a lot of studios would be really, really hesitant to have a trans character who's always talking about it, because like the implication
my goal would be to have a trans character who. So the way I would probably go about it in terms of like you just have to have a trans character. It's just have a character that without explanation is referred to only using they them or something like that. And that is a good, like, you don't have to say it, but
Didn't we do
if
that in
you
Owl House? There was a character in Owl House who they were just like, yeah, they them, and I don't think they ever like explained it. Or...
Yeah, and I think that's good, but I still kind of that's the way I would initially go about it. But then you're still running into that problem of like, well, you know, to most of the people in the audience who aren't like super into this, like they're like, it's something that you could very easily miss, especially if it's not like a constantly recurring character that is constantly talked about.
Well,
like,
same with quickly flipping down a photo of a person who appears a different gender.
I'm just saying that it could be like, you could have a couple of moments that are like that build up to, I don't know. I guess
it does seem like you want to have your cake and eat it. Like at the same time, you want like enough care and attention being paid to these elements of representation that they're centered in a character's like story and reveal. But on the other hand, you want it to be like really laid back and chill. I don't know if there's a way to reconcile that necessarily.
Yeah, that's kind of my bad. Like, I'm not really explaining it super well. It's like almost 2 a.m. But I think the point I'm trying to make that is clearly not getting across because I'm not explaining it properly is I'm not against explaining these, like a hypothetical trans character or whatever, but I am kind of annoyed when it's like they're present and their presence has to be justified with this like over drawn out explanation. Like,
well, that's what you're asking for, aren't you?
No, but like by all means have like an explanation, but I'm saying that I just want to have a trans character whose defining characteristic isn't being trans.
Right, I agree with that, but I feel like such a character would, like, you would never know they're trans, right? Like either it's just either it's left to being so subtle that the only way you can ever learn they're trans is by doing like the Dark Souls lore shit, where you're like digging into the game code to find out the truth or whatever. Or you make it more obvious, in which case it has to be a story plot. Because, like, if you're gonna fucking out a trans person in a story, there's gotta be a narrative reason for it, you know? Unless you have a character that's incredibly out and proud about it, like a lot of modern youth, gay, queer transes are, which is fine, but that will never pass, like, modern censors, you know? Like a person, like fucking modern youth, trans, queer, whatever the fucks, are, like, zipping around screaming about thussies and, like, you know, girl dick and blah blah. Like, there are so many elements of that culture that don't translate into,
I think I would like, the point I'm trying to make is, like, I want the representation without the focus on the culture. Like, I think that Marvel episode, who was that trans character in that? Was it Marvel? Marvel, right?
I haven't a clue. Marvel?
Help me out, chat. I can't find it.
Statistically, Marvel's probably had at least one trans character, right? If they do, though, I don't know them.
Yeah, it was in a TV show, and there's like one bit where this character like comes out to someone, and then that's it.
Doesn't that feel pandery, though?
I would say that that's like kind of the representation I prefer, because it's not constantly being, or even like it's brought up once and you know that character is trans, and then it's inconsequential to the rest of the story.
Then why bring it up at all? Like, narratively, that just seems like a virtue signal. Like, hey, look, you know, we have a trans. You know, like, if I was watching a show, like, I would feel pandered to.
The problem there is, like, I guess the problem with trans characters, or, like, queer characters in general, is that unless it's a case of, like, oh, they just use they, them, or something like that, it's not the same kind of thing as, like, representation of, like, minority ethnic characters, where you can literally just put them there and, like, you can just see it. Like if there was like a character who had like, I don't know, a trans flag pin on them or something like that, and they were played by a trans actor, and it just doesn't come up in the story.
Well, yeah, that'd be fine. But then,
Yeah,
but that would be very
was
minor representation. I mean, that
yeah,
is
and that's
now we're
kind
on
of the
the other
problem.
side of things.
You have to make it visible, but obviously you can't. You kind of have to like do the right balance.
I don't know if it would do much to, like, if we're talking about kids media as well, I don't know if that would do much to introduce people to the concept, right? One of the important things about representation is making people like aware of the existence of these groups. And as you're pointing out with like black people or whatever, like they can just be there and that's known, you know? But if you're putting queer people or whatever in like a show that's marketed towards young people and all you're showing is like a trans flag, like they're not gonna necessarily get that. Or if they do, then they probably already knew about trans people, right? It's not really normalizing them. This is the struggle with trans representation. A lot of trans people legit just want to be invisible. So representation, they want representation, but in a way, individually at least, they don't want exposure. That's not the case with all of them, but it's definitely like a dichotomy that doesn't exist with a lot of other groups.
I mean, like, so for example, like I'm trans, so, but one of the things that I do want within representation is just like, I'm not like, sure, it'd be great to just, I mean, personally, like, sure, it'd be great to just like have it not be a thing that comes up in my life and to not have to think about it. But it is kind of like, it is one of those things. It's like you just have to keep on thinking about it. Well, at least a lot of the time. But the thing there is that, like, it's just, I don't know. I'm kind of lost for words to like explain it, but
no, I think these are almost irreconcilable. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, like, the main point is like the representation is important, but I think also that the specific problem with having a trans character is like that sort of that dichotomy between making them known without over explaining them or like making it too big of a deal.
Yeah, it's really difficult, especially in kids media, because you can't really be casually explicit in kids media the way that you can in adult media. In adult media, you could have a character like very, if you wanted to, like crassly, just say like, yeah, it's fucking trans girl, whatever, go on, and then it's like not even an issue. It doesn't get addressed in the future.
The way that I would do it in a kids show is not use any of the. I wouldn't have a character say, "I'm trans." I would have a character be like, "Oh, I was born male or female or whatever," and have that be like, you're not actually using any of the language. You're just introducing kids to the idea that this kind of person can exist.
Right, but
and I don't think you would have to do much explanation or anything like that to be able to just have a character there who you just have in, not in like passing, but having a character that just like says at one point like, "Oh, I was born X thing that I'm not currently," like.
But if it's not relevant to their character arc at all, like I don't know why that would ever be said, especially like with animated media.
Arcs or whatever, like being any certain like race or whatever isn't relevant to most characters' arcs.
Yeah, but nobody in a kid show like randomly is like, "Hey, just so you know, I'm black," and then like they move on. Like they don't do that. If you bring it up, especially in,
I need to tell you my dark secret.
Yeah.
No, but like it's.
Oh, nice. No, but the issue here is like, again, like, first of all, I think that'd be, at least me personally, I think that'd be incredibly weird watching like a kid's animation and like in a way that's not even tied to a character's like main growth or identity, because we're trying to not make it central to their character. They're like,
well,
hey,
you can have it be
I was born male. Well, right, but then it becomes an element of their character again, and then you run to that problem where every single trans character in media.
That's the thing. I don't think that is bad. but I just don't think that it's necessary to explain the whole concept of like people being trans just to have a trans character.
No, I'm not.
Because
I'm
I
not
don't think
saying you.
that's my only thing.
No, I'm not saying that you have to. I'm only saying that either you keep the fact that they're trans so like subtle and so like frankly irrelevant to their character that it might as well just be like them casually saying which flavor of ice cream they like best randomly in one episode, or you have to like go full tilt and make it a part of their character, in which case you have that problem where every trans character,
I think
like
you can still
their
make it part of.
story is about them being trans, which is like super common. Like all like this is very, very common where it's like, well, if a trans character exists and it's made mention that they're trans, that has to be like a part of their journey. You know what I mean? And if you like, there's nothing wrong with that at all. But then it's like, well, that's every trans character then, right?
Yeah. I mean, so I think it is actually possible to have like you write in that this character's trans and they come out at some point, and that can be part of their character and it can be part of their development, but still not have to make a big deal out of it. If you get what I mean.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I guess I just don't know what the issue then would be with like the non-binary character in the Owl House, or
I didn't actually. This is the first I'm hearing of it. I didn't notice that.
Wait, what? Wait, you can't. Wait, hold on. You can't. You were making comments on this shit. Here. Wait, what's the name of that character? Chat. What's the name of that character? Is it Rain or something? Rani? Rain Whispers? What a gay fucking name. Never mind. I take it back.
That's the thing. Like if you have like all of the like you're saying it even jokingly, you're like, oh, it's such a gay fucking name, but like it's true, isn't it? Like,
well, they're like a
like
magic user, right? I mean, I don't know, like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, like
pretty.
All of the names in Owl House are fucking gay, but like, but that's kind of the problem for me. Like, I don't want to have a show that's so niche that only I get it, and that's where the queer representation's at.
Well, I think a lot of people like the Owl House. I don't think it was super niche or whatever.
Yeah, no,
but I know what you mean about like having representation in like shows that are just normal shows and not shows that scream gay. Because if you're gay, or like even I'm gay enough to know this, like you can look at the promotional material for the Owl House and immediately know how gay it is. It's effortless. It's like it like instantly with no effort whatsoever, you can look at the Owl House and go, ah, yes, a gay show that'll have gays. And I remember when the Owl House first got announced and the trailer and all the animation stuff came out, and I was wondering like, okay, how far are we going this time? We'll definitely have lesbians. Are we going to have gay characters? Are we going to have non-binary characters? Will they have an actual trans person or just an allegorical trans person? Like I was asking these questions as soon as I ran up there because I knew they would go that direction. And I do agree there need to be characters, I guess, outside of that. It's just, you know, the more normalized something becomes, especially with trans people, the less visible they're going to be relative to their existence in that story. Because a lot of trans people really do just want to be, you know, not recognized as trans. I'm not saying that's like a goal or that it's like you know that they should, or but that's just it's a fact of the world. It is in the case that a lot of them do just want to be sort of like passively accepted.
I don't want to like remove that as part of my identity, but I just don't want it to be a thing that matters to anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like at least with
I don't want to have to keep explaining myself and just like, oh, this is me, and this is like the million political issues that come with interacting with me in any circumstance. Like, I think that is like the dream would be to have a character in media that has that like, I think with the whole like OSA thing in Rainbow Six, it's like it's easier because you just have to write a bio and there's no story that you have to tell. There is no character development. This is just a different avatar with another ability that you might have to make an animation for that isn't about anything to do with their personal relationships or whatever.
Right. Well, that can't work with like kids TV because that's a game. Like you just have your character bio and then you're running around and doing your shit. Yeah, I feel like Chet's point is, I feel like we're talking in circles. I feel like we broadly agree. It's just like a difficult balance to take, you know?
Yeah.
Between the limit, between the censors for any kind of children's publication, the like limits imposed upon like public broadcasting, and the fact that like public acceptance is ever changing and not quite where it should be right now, it's going to be really, really difficult to find like the good way of representing these issues.
Yeah, and I think like only time will tell what ends up being the sort of method of representing queer characters that ends up like making it through. But I still think it's like the main point, I guess, is that I think we might disagree on is that I think those shows that end up having this kind of very incredibly over, like not necessarily Owl House, because Owl House to a lesser degree, but I think more specifically like She-Ra with all of like the explicit like rainbow marketing, unicorns. Like,
I agree that She-Ra laid it on about as thick as it's possible to lay it
like,
on.
Like laying it on really thick like that, I think is not just like, oh well, you know, straight people aren't going to watch it. It's like I think it's kind of explicitly harmful because what happens. Well, yeah, because you, but I mean, maybe, I think you get what I mean, but because you were saying the thing about, like, blowing your load too early or whatever, with all of, like, you're just kind of shoving all of the good queer characters into one TV show.
Well, I feel like it's awkward a little bit, or maybe, you know, it's sort of an awkward stumbling step on the road towards better representation. But I don't think I don't think it's harmful. Like, I don't think they did a bad or immoral thing or anything like that. I just
no. I'm just saying, like, it's not with any kind of intent. It's just like the result of the thing that they did was that now, you know, a network can be like, oh, we have great representation. We have that one show with all of the, you know, the million stereotypical queer couples or whatever. Like, you know, I do kind of get a little bit cynical about the motivations of a lot of these networks, but in the end, if they make good representation, I don't give a shit. But like right now, the representation does kind of feel like really, really overt pandering that's not actually going to appeal to a mainstream audience. And I think Owl House takes a step forward that She-Ra kind of stumbled over, which was the whole, like, they managed to do it in a more kid-friendly form without all of the, like, super duper duper overt marketing. Like, they managed to make it so that, you know, it was just a kids show. And I know, like, I saw some, like, people in chat saying that, like, well, like, Disney aren't going to greenlight something that has, like, good trans representation or whatever for kids because, like, they cancelled Owl House. And this goes back to, like, they didn't cancel Owl House because it had too many of the gays in it. They canceled Owl House because it's not profitable enough for them, because they need to pander to even younger kids. And at that point, you're going beyond the realm of queer representation. You just need to get, like, toddlers interested. And, like, toddlers don't give a shit about if there are trans characters in it.
Well, I mean, I feel like we're still gonna see a lot of good progressive animation times to come. I have no idea at all.
Oh yeah, I don't doubt
why the Owl House was canceled. I have absolutely no idea why. I've never looked into it. I just sort of accepted it, because that's life. I'm sure the people who worked in it will go on to continue doing cool things. Anyway, I did actually have somebody who needed to come on here and tell me to kill myself at 6.
Oh boy, we'll have fun.
It's a busy job being a streamer, you know. No, yeah. I do appreciate the conversation, even if chat was weirdly fucking hostile towards you the entire time. Because,
well, fuck you, chat.
Well, they're all infant-brained, and the only media they've ever consumed is cartoons designed for 12-year-olds. So you're hitting them where it hurts. Anyway, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Also, stop being racist to British people.
All right. You've overstayed your welcome. Get out of here.
See ya. Thank you very much.
See ya. Have a good one.